I'm Kearnsy, and I'm a big softie. I came onto the scene a bit late in Kenny and Betty's life, the last 20 years, which given the scope of their longevity and vitality, that was somewhat late. But their lives were no less rich in their older years. And I feel very privileged to have been around to see some of the transitions from having lived in Aspen in this beautiful home with this beautiful family and the warmth that they shared and the graciousness. Valerie and I lived there a couple of years after we were married in a yurt back behind their house in the Aspen Glade where we got married. And I just found them always to be so welcoming. And then, of course, they moved to Santa Barbara. And, of course, not many of you may have had contact with them from time to time. But again, I feel like I got to see a portion of their life that was very dear. Especially Betty in some ways. You know Betty. She was quite a strong personality. She had her opinions and her views, and that's just sort of the way it was for a lot of her younger life. She was a force to be reckoned with, a wonderful trait that she's actually passed along to her daughters. But the last few years of her life were really special as I experienced her. She softened up so much. I think because her body started, of course, to slow down with age, and for a number of other reasons. She just took the time, or maybe it just happened, I don't really know. But she began to touch into the tender spots, the spots where the wounds are, the spots that a lot of us like to defend and where that hardness might come from. But she seemed to touch into, for instance, the loss of her two children and feel that pain and question and wonder and experience her regret and her guilt. But what it did is it opened up another part of her, which she so graciously shared with all of us, which was just all the love that she had. All the love that she had to share. And in a lot of ways, it was a return to her innocence. And what more could one ask from a life? And of course, when she died, it really was, it was sort of the last straw for Kenny in some ways. I mean, as we could all imagine, to lose someone that you've been with for 65 years. It's hard to fathom that. I haven't been around that long. I was going to make a joke here and say it took the wind out of Kenny's sails, but Kenny wasn't a sailor. He was a motorboat guy. It took the gas out of his engine a little bit. I remember when we had Betty's memorial in January, he came out and he spoke, and he cracked a bit. He cried. I'd never seen him express emotion that way. It was lovely. And of course, I didn't know Kenny as a builder, skier. We skied a little bit here and there. But the adventures, at least on an outward level, were over. He, of course, spent a lot of time in bed. I mean, he had worked his body good. He had gotten every bit he could out of his body and did so many great things. And so spending time with Kenny was a lot about going in to his bedroom where he was lying there, and you would either sit with him or lay in the bed with him. And he would always turn on what he thought you wanted to watch on television. For me, it was soccer. Sometimes I would get lucky and hit him up late night, and we'd watch Gunsmoke or some other Western. Of course, everyone had their own channel. For the grandkids, it was cartoons. And of course, the animals, he always loved his animals, And he, of course, gave them naughty things, sort of like he gave us all naughty things that we shouldn't have, like candy. But he loved to give the animals treats, and they'd always hop up on his bed. And he'd give them little snacks to the cat and the dog. He was just that way. He wanted to give people what he thought they wanted. And sometimes going into his room, you just have a chance to talk. And of course, he had a lot of pretty strong opinions and views himself. And he would give a discourse on human nature or politics, mostly Aspen politics. Oh, I have another joke. You can take the old timer out of Aspen, but you cannot take the Aspen out of the old timer. There's just no way. He was still very clued in and feeling the pulse of the town. And honestly, I didn't always get where Kenny was coming from. I didn't get his political views. It's just not really my bent so much, It's not my inclination. And his human nature, that made sense to me. But a lot of times I didn't quite understand. And I would try to dialogue with him, but there wasn't always the opening. I'm not quite quick enough up here sometimes. Kenny had a sharp mind. But what really endeared Kenny to me, and I think to everyone that he touched, was the light of his spirit and the warmth of his soul, the warmth of his heart. And it didn't really matter to me what he was talking about, especially as I matured more in myself. I just realized who Kenny Moore really is and how it naturally just sort of flowed through him, regardless of the whys and what fors. And so that's what I really learned to appreciate about Kenny and Betty, was just the graciousness of their spirit and the warmth of their hearts. And I have felt very fortunate to have been touched by them. And wish them well on their next adventure, which they're undoubtedly on right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stella, and this is my sister Keegan, and Ken and Betty were our grandparents.
We were very lucky to have lived here in Aspen with them, often with them in their home Gully's End, for our entire childhoods. And they really exemplified living. Not only did they share all of their wonderful adventures, but also they instilled in us their love of art, music, and literature.
So today we'd like to share two poems that were written by our grandfather in 1939. For those of you doing the math, that would have made him 18. And they were published in the Choate Literary Magazine, which was the high school that he attended.
Two fish and a porringer. Far below, the sea-green liquid, home of fish, pasture of tired and resting ships. In a cabin, on the table, rested a porringer, remembrance from an aunt to a child, long since gone. One fish in it thoughtfully placed its eggs. Another, on these potential thousands dined. Birth, food, death, emptiness.
Turtle conservative. Turtle, tastefully engraved, with mail red and blazoned. Turtle, tactful in retreat and tactful in reply. Turtle, cautious on his way as we rush madly by. Thank you.